After getting pregnant, Ethan forgot to register our marriage for the 7th time. As a result, I had a car accident right outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Heartbroken, I endured the pain of a miscarriage and sent him a breakup message. His little assistant ran into his arms crying, "It's all my fault. I kept nagging you to stay with me, that's why Sister Nina got angry." Ethan comforted her with pity and made it clear that he never intended to marry me. If the baby in my belly was gone, then so be it. The little assistant proudly sent me the recording, taunting me relentlessly. He casually said, "As long as she's happy." But on the day I really left, Ethan knelt down and begged me to come back with every step. "Why didn't you cook?" Ethan, reeking of alcohol, pushed open the door while I was lying on the sofa watching a drama. Usually, whenever he came home, I would eagerly rush to greet him, bringing tea, pouring water, and taking his coat. But today, I just glanced up and continued scrolling on my phone without a word. This made Ethan, who had reached out his hand, pause in surprise. Then, as if remembering something, he searched his body and took out an unwrapped necklace. "Anniversary gift, I haven't forgotten. I drank too much at the social event today. Go cook quickly, I'm a bit hungry." As he approached, the air was filled with a nauseating stench of alcohol, mixed faintly with the scent of perfume. That smell, no need to guess, I already knew whose it was. Someone cheating outside, coming home and still claiming to be hungry, made me find it somewhat laughable. "Did you hear that?" Ethan frowned, took out his phone, and transferred 200,000 to me. This is our daily life, even the chat history is filled with nothing but transfer records. After 6 years of dating, from endless topics to formulaic replies, and finally to money transfers. He's too lazy to even bother with perfunctory responses. I had someone specially pick out this necklace. "If you don't like it, go see for yourself. I've already transferred the money to you," he softened his tone, trying to explain to me. I was too lazy to look at him, scrolling up and down with both hands, seriously enjoying the video. Probably sensing my off mood, Ethan stopped talking and let out a huff in frustration. He was reminding me of my own existence through his actions. I thought for a moment, looked at him and asked, "When do you want me to move out?" "Move out? What do you mean?" Ethan turned to face me, locking eyes. Before he could even be happy for a few seconds, he heard my unhesitating reply, "I'll move out to make room for your little lover." Although my tone was very calm, the bitterness inside still revealed my feelings at that moment. I was very, very sad. "What tricks are you playing again?" "I've already explained it clearly. I lost track of time at the social event today, I even gave you a gift. It has nothing to do with Chloe. Hurry up and cook, even if you're upset, there has to be a limit." After he finished speaking, he threw his jacket aside and stepped into the bathroom. It was always like this, no matter how messy the house was, as long as he took a nap or had a shower, I would tidy everything up and make him a delicious meal. Gradually, having a meal together became our unspoken way of making up. No matter how big the issue was or how embarrassing the quarrel, as long as I was willing to cook for him, it was a symbol of reconciliation. The sound of water dripping came from the bathroom, and the phone on the table lit up, displaying a happy photo of the two of them. It wasn't the first time I had seen their picture, but I never expected it to be set as the wallpaper. We had been together for 6 years. At first, Ethan would domineeringly announce us officially on Facebook, but gradually, he only half-heartedly humored me. Who would have thought that even someone like him would one day set a couple photo as his wallpaper? The girl in the photo is named Chloe, and her family has been longtime friends with Ethan's. When they first got together, their relationship wasn't exactly good. Chloe's parents were unwilling to let their precious daughter associate with the fallen young master who had fallen out of the Luo family. Everything changed after Ethan succeeded in starting his own business. Not only did his parents reconcile with him, but the Chu family also sent their little princess to work under him as an assistant, euphemistically calling it training. The once strangers who lingered around every day have grown from childhood friends into inseparable little lovers. I am not angry about Chloe's appearance, flies don't bother eggs without cracks. Without Chloe, there would be someone else. If Ethan were truly a good person, stories about him and his little lover wouldn't be spreading all over town. 20 minutes later, Ethan came out of the bathroom, the fragrance of the shower gel masking the nauseating smell on him. I was still sitting on the sofa, witnessing his gaze change from anticipation to indifference. The expected meal never appeared, and his carelessly tossed jacket and shoes and socks remained on the floor, mocking his self-infatuation. 6 years of effort and care couldn't earn a single kind word. One time of doing nothing, and he glared at me with disgust. Nina, I really don't know what's going on in your head. Tomorrow is the family dinner, Chloe will be there too, so don't deliberately target her then. He compromised on my behavior, irritably took out his phone to order takeout. I pretended not to see his actions and gaze, continuing to fiddle with my phone. If he looked closely, he would surely see the tears shimmering in my eyes. My lover had long since silently died. Did you hear me? After ordering, Ethan spoke again irritably. I didn't even look up and just replied with a my heart a barren wasteland. A family banquet is supposed to be a gathering in name only, outsiders shouldn't appear. But every time, Ethan would pressure me by saying they were old family friends. In his heart, Chloe was like another daughter to his mother, but he forgot that Ethan's parents never liked me in the first place. Once Chloe left, I felt even more like a clown, abandoned in a corner, ignored by everyone. The worst time, I prepared a table full of dishes and brought them to the table, only to be sent back to the kitchen by Mrs. Grace as if I was not worthy to be there. She kindly held Chloe's hand and introduced her to everyone as her future daughter-in-law. I protested loudly, but Ethan turned around and accused me of being impolite, saying it was such a small matter and I was being unreasonable. From beginning to end, in that family, I was the only outsider. Sounds of movement came from outside the door. Ethan's takeout had arrived. When he received it, I thought for a moment and said, "Since this is your family gathering, I won't go." "What do you mean?" Ethan turned to look at me. I waved my hand. "We're about to separate, so I won't attend the family gathering. I'll move out as soon as possible, after all, the child is no longer here." At the mention of the child, the anger in Ethan's eyes instantly vanished. He must have remembered too. After I got pregnant, in order to give the child a legal identity, I proposed marriage. Ethan agreed wholeheartedly, but on the way to register our marriage, he stood me up 7 times. The 7th time, I was already at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. But Ethan was called back by a phone call, the reason being that Chloe had made a mistake at work and was scolded harshly by the other company. It wasn't a serious matter. The important thing was that the person on the other side had taken Ethan's heart. Naturally, I was left waiting at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Ethan promised over the phone that he would definitely come back and told me to wait a little longer. While waiting, I was hit by a drunk driver and thrown to the ground. When I woke up, the child was gone. Sometimes I often wonder if the little one in my belly, sensing that mom and dad don't love each other, quietly left. If that's the case, maybe the child not being born is a kind of happiness. I can explain what happened last time. Ethan, holding the takeout, thought for a long time and finally lowered his head in guilt. That child wasn't mine alone, breaking the promise was his fault, and he had no way to argue. But that doesn't mean he can't forcibly comfort himself. That day, I clearly said Chloe was cried on by the company across the street, her parents sent her over, so I should take care of everything for her. As for you, a pregnant woman, what are you doing standing at the door? Have you ever considered your own problems? Maybe the child feels you don't deserve to be a mother, so it chose to leave. My heart stings, but I forced a smile on my face. Yes, I don't deserve to be a mother. In the past, I could hardly imagine these words coming from Ethan's mouth. We met in college, and he fell in love with me at first sight. It's a hard reason to believe, but that day was sunny, and the young man held flowers and asked me if I could be his girlfriend, which eventually stirred my heart. After we got together, due to differences in family background and spending habits, Ethan and I often argued. He was always the one who bowed his head, and even when faced with opposition from his family, he would secretly fly back from abroad again and again. Countless round-trip tickets and cold chat records were the only comfort in our hearts. After enduring until graduation, Ethan started his own business. That year was very tough. I accompanied him squeezed into a shabby little rental, witnessing all kinds of people. Once, the girl next door became pregnant. Due to long-term malnutrition and having to take care of her boyfriend, she lost the baby and suffered heavy bleeding. It was Ethan and I who took her to the hospital. Inside the ward came cries of pain, and outside, Ethan, tears streaming down his face, told me he would treat me well for the rest of his life. If he could, he would rather not have the child, but if he had to, he would take good care of me. That night, I heard the most beautiful words of love. After everything changed, my lover accused me of being unworthy of being a mother. He forgot to care for me, and that was the beginning of his lack of love. The next day, Ethan was angry with me for what I said and left early to pick up Chloe. I didn't stop him. After he left, I quietly packed my bags and moved out of that home. The cold room could not confine a soul yearning for freedom, and love was not a reason for Ethan to endlessly demand from me. To move on from this failed relationship, I booked a flight to Yun province for myself. That week, I saw mountains, rivers, and the different beauties of the world. After returning home, the first thing I did was a full-body checkup. After the car accident, I was left with no lingering issues, as if my child had taken the blow for me. Even the doctors praised me in disbelief. "Ms. Nina, you are recovering very well. I will prescribe some remedies to nourish your chi and blood. Soon, you will be able to conceive normally." I raised my hand to touch my belly, where a little life once was. His passing was silent, and it did not take away a bit of my health. By the way, Ms. Nina, the recipes you researched, I have shared them with many patients, and their feedback has been very positive. "Thank you for solving a difficult problem for me," the doctor said, referring to the meals I prepare for Ethan every day. To take care of his health, I put a lot of effort into creating nutritious and delicious meals. How could they not be good? For patients who have just been discharged, the recipes I put together can help them quickly recover from physical weakness. The doctor also discovered this skill of mine by chance while I was hospitalized and asked me for quite a few recipes. I think it's great. Helping others is definitely better than cooking for Ethan, that ungrateful wolf. When I walked out of the hospital, I ran into Chloe. Standing beside her was a dignified and elegant woman, who was Ethan's mother. They were surprised to see me at the hospital. Chloe asked worriedly if I was feeling unwell, while Mrs. Grace coldly questioned, "You skip a perfectly good family dinner just to run to the hospital. If you value your life so much, how come you can't even protect my grandson?" You see, those who dislike you always know your pain points best. "Auntie, don't say that about Nina. She must be very upset about losing the child. We're not here to see the doctor with you, are we? Let's go inside first." She playfully winked at me, seeming quite pleased to have come to my defense. Mrs. Grace didn't persist, but Ethan frowned unhappily. "What are you doing here? Planning some kind of trick again?" Not long after the car accident, I still had some minor injuries. I raised my wrist to show and retorted sarcastically, "What? Is Ethan so overbearing that he wants to take away my right to see a doctor?" "That's not what I meant." Ethan's eyes darkened, his gaze falling on my stomach. Chloe understood the undercurrents between us and quickly grabbed his sleeve. "Let's go, Auntie is still waiting for us. She's been having stomach problems lately, and I heard this hospital has great recipes. I'll cook for you later." After forcibly interrupting our conversation, Chloe firmly pulled Ethan away. Mrs. Grace snorted coldly, and Ethan, with his back to me, issued a warning. "Nina, you've made enough noise for so long. Recently, I could let you think you wanted to go out for a break, but move back as soon as possible. Today, my mother has already agreed to our marriage." It should have been good news, but I sneered and walked away. Ethan kept looking back every few steps. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't care. Now, the only ties between us were that house and the shares. That was the house we bought together when we decided to get married. To prevent the Luo family from accusing me of taking advantage of them, I paid half of the house cost and the renovation fees. Since we are separating, let's make it a clean break. When Ethan received the lawyer's call, he was silent for a long time. He had always thought I was just throwing a tantrum, never expecting me to be so resolute this time. Let's meet and talk. I knew he was discussing this with me beside the lawyer. I nodded and agreed to his request. We arranged to meet at the coffee shop next to our home. To my surprise, not only Chloe showed up, but Mrs. Grace came along as well. As soon as I sat down after entering, Mrs. Grace began to mock me openly and covertly. It's just an anniversary of being in love, is it really necessary to make such a big fuss? You've been with my son for so many years, and you've even lost a child in your womb. Do you think that after leaving Ethan, you'll be able to find someone better? I just don't understand why you can't be a little more sensible like Chloe. She knew I had lost a child, that was her grandchild, but coming from her mouth, it sounded so casual and indifferent. Mom, please stop. Maybe out of guilt, Ethan stopped Mrs. Grace for the first time and looked at me with disapproval. Although my mom's words are harsh, it's true, Nina, it's just an anniversary. What have I not given you? What are you making a fuss about? We're about to get married soon. If you're dissatisfied with something, just say it, okay? Yeah, Sister Nina, recently Brother Ethan has been worried sick about your issues. He still has to work normally. When you make a fuss like this, have you ever thought about his health? Even now, they all just think I'm making a fuss over the wedding anniversary. No one has thought about my child, nor have they considered how desperate I was when I was hit. Ethan, I've already said, either we part on good terms, or I don't mind tearing things apart. I was too tired to hide my impatience. Ethan's face turned pale, unable to say a word. If you don't want to marry, then don't. My son divorced you, there are plenty of people he can find. After going through such a serious car accident, who knows if you've become a hen that can't lay eggs? Mrs. Grace spoke as harshly as ever, and this time, Ethan did not intervene. The three sat down, and Mrs. Grace once again revealed her ugly face. The house is under my son's name, it's his marital home and can never belong to you. All these years you've been by my son's side, he's been supporting you, and you've taken enough advantage. She treated me like a parasite clinging to Ethan. I tapped the table, but my eyes were scanning Chloe in the corner. A sharp light gleamed in her eyes, and she forgot to hide those little gestures. I can give you the house, but I paid half of the mortgage and the renovation costs. You need to return every penny to me. My words made Mrs. Grace widen her eyes, and she shouted in disbelief, a girl from a rural family like you, how much money could you possibly have? Paying half the mortgage is laughable, and renovation costs? You probably can't even afford a table, right, Ethan? The sharp sarcasm lowered when it touched Ethan's ugly expression. I didn't expect that Ethan had never brought this up. Over the years, while taking care of Ethan, I never neglected my own work. When Ethan needed funds, I even taught myself illustration, going from no income to establishing a studio. It can be said that Ethan's success was entirely supported by me. Without me, there would be no him today. So how did I become a freeloader in Mrs. Grace's words? Mom, stop it. Feeling my naked gaze, Ethan hung his head in shame. Nina, I know you're upset. It was my fault for missing our appointment last time. We'll go get our marriage certificate tomorrow and hold the wedding. How does that sound? If it really can't wait, we can do it today. Look, I even brought the household registration book. He suddenly showed a sincere desire to marry me. I watched Chloe with great interest and saw the jealousy she couldn't hide in time. During the car accident, I vaguely heard the driver say, Miss Chloe. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but seeing Chloe's current state, it's hard not to suspect that the accident was staged. The purpose, of course, was for the man in front of me. Ethan, I think I've made myself very clear. I'm here today to discuss the house issue. If you want to talk about anything else, there's no need for us to continue. As I was about to get up, Chloe grabbed Ethan's hand and spoke hypocritically, Brother Ethan, since Nina has made up her mind, just let her go. Isn't there a saying that love is about letting go? Probably too worried that I would suddenly agree to marry, she anxiously flashed a triumphant look at me. Nina, I respect your choice. Rest assured, I will take good care of brother Ethan and auntie in the future. I hope you will too, after parting with brother Ethan. She suddenly fell silent, afraid I would get angry. After leaving Ethan, everyone thought I would have a hard time. If you have time, why not worry about your brother Ethan instead? After all, there's his company and my shares. The two women in front of me stood up simultaneously at the startling remark, and Chloe completely forgot to maintain her composure, breaking down and shouting, Nina, I know not getting married is a huge blow to you, but you can't just make outrageous demands. Everything Ethan has now, he earned with his own hands. You haven't contributed anything, yet you want a share of the company? On what grounds? Exactly, I advise you not to shamelessly take advantage. You paid for the house, so we'll refund you. But wanting a share? No way. All these years, my son has supported you, fed you, clothed you, letting you live like a queen. You forget an anniversary and make such a fuss. I've never seen a woman so inconsiderate of her own man. Ask yourself honestly, what have you contributed in these 6 years? Mrs. Grace pointed her finger at my nose, scolding me angrily. During the argument, I saw the things in her bag, they were all recipes I had written down. Is that so? Are you sure I haven't contributed anything? I didn't believe it. After all this time eating Ethan's cooking, there must be something to it. Even when Mrs. Grace felt unwell, it was my recipes I cooked to take care of her. I have never wronged this family. Moreover, the shares were bought with my money, they are rightfully mine. Enough of you. The sarcasm on my face grew more obvious. Ethan shouted loudly, looking at me as if pleading. Nina, do you really have to make such a scene? I just forgot an anniversary. At worst, I'll make it up to you. It was my fault, let's talk when we get back. The curious gazes of outsiders made him feel ashamed. It was the first time I realized that this man could also feel embarrassed. Ethan. Seeing that I was about to continue making a scene, Ethan simply took Mrs. Grace and Chloe and walked out. I refused to follow, so he cautiously begged me, Nina, making a big deal out of this won't do anyone any good. He was right, he was shameless, but I was even more so. After leaving the cafe, Ethan said he would go back to the Luo family to sort things out. I glanced at my phone and shook my head. You go explain things clearly to your little lover and your mom first. I have something to do, so I'm leaving. The one who called me was the private detective I hired. Right after the car accident, I immediately contacted the detective to find evidence linking the hit-and-run driver to Chloe. Unfortunately, by the time I woke up, it was already too late. The driver had committed suicide out of guilt, and his family was nowhere to be found. Ethan took the initiative to forgive them on my behalf. He said, they're all dead, and you're unharmed. There's no need to go all out. Besides, they left this place on their own, Nina. Sometimes you have to leave a way out for people. His casual words decided the fate of my child. I refused to accept it and even suspected in my heart that the accident might be related to him. After all, I did hold a significant share, and it wasn't impossible for Ethan to target me to be with Chloe in peace. Miss Nina, are you listening to me? The detective's voice pulled me back to reality. I gave a hum in response and tightened my grip on the thing in my hand. The place where the family responsible for the accident fled to was very far away. He searched for a long time, visiting many of their former friends and neighbors, and only learned from the drunken colleague of the driver that they had gone to Jiang City. Coincidentally, Chloe's parents also traveled there during the time I had the car accident. Finally gathering a shred of evidence, I let out a long breath and told the private detective to continue staking out. If it really was a man-made accident, there would definitely be a slip-up. I want to personally avenge my child. At night, my best friend Linda, who heard I had cancelled the wedding, rushed over in a hurry. She brought a lot of clothes and makeup, and without heeding my puzzled look, she immediately pushed me down onto a chair. Nina, you've finally seen through that hypocritical man. If you ask me, you should have dumped him long ago. A man who only knows how to live off you and dares to have a mistress on the side is all because you spoiled him. Luckily, you've finally come to your senses. The child's matter is over. Just think if that bitch Ethan had is unworthy of having a child. I'll take you out to have some fun, she said, winking at me flirtatiously. Half an hour later, seeing myself heavily made up in the mirror, I was momentarily stunned. After starting to date Ethan, I always put him first, neglecting my own self-presentation and grooming. Not to mention, such heavy makeup would never have appeared on my face before. Stunned, huh? Let's go. With your look tonight, snagging 8 guys wouldn't be a problem. I didn't expect Linda to have actually called over quite a few handsome guys. Among them were 2 who used to be my juniors at school. This made my face flush red, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do with my hands. Linda noticed my discomfort and specially had the juniors she knew sit beside me. Nina hasn't gone out to have fun in a long time. Let's toast to her breaking free from her misery. The clinking of glasses exploded in my mind. I swallowed, just about to finish my drink, when someone grabbed my wrist. Ethan had somehow arrived here without me noticing. I blinked and quickly shook him off. Are you sick? I already said I'm not getting married, so what? Ethan, of all people, has even learned to stalk me now? I couldn't imagine that Ethan would be so bored as to follow me. I'm not stalking you. The man in front of me was hurt by my words and hurriedly pulled out his phone from his pocket. It's the couple app we used before, it just notifies me of your location, I'm not stalking you. He pointed at the glaring map on the screen, and only then did I remember that we had specially downloaded it during our passionate romance. But if I wasn't mistaken, Ethan especially disliked this thing. I just wanted to see where you were. Who would have thought you'd be at a bar? Nina, you can throw a fit all you want, but don't degrade your own body. If you can't take care of yourself, then move back. I heard the funniest joke of my life. Move back, as if he would take care of me. Ethan, outsiders don't understand, and you don't either? For the past 6 years, I've been cooking for you in all sorts of ways, your stomach issues and hypoglycemia have almost completely improved, / in that house, who exactly is taking care of whom? Get lost quickly / I showed a look of disgust, and the junior behind me immediately stepped forward to drive him away. Ethan couldn't win, and couldn't bring himself to face it, so he had to flee in defeat. After a night of debauchery, a junior added me on social media. His name was Tony, but I had no impression of him. However, what he said when adding me caught my attention. Things had been so bad recently that I didn't even realize Tony was my attending physician. While I was unconscious, he heard Chloe whispering in my ear, saying things like serves you right, the person didn't die, and it's good the child is gone. This made Tony feel something was wrong, so he paid special attention to the whole matter. With his involvement, I quickly obtained clues about the family of the driver responsible for the accident. Unfortunately, they did not admit to being instructed by anyone. The private detective was almost caught because of this, so I had to turn my attention back to Ethan. As long as Chloe has some scheme, I'm not afraid she won't reveal her true intentions. Unexpectedly, Tony also joined my team. He began appearing around me frequently and openly expressing his affection. Whenever I had the thought of refusing, Tony would pitifully say, "It's not for you, nor to help you." As a doctor, I think their behavior is excessive, and there are children lost. Every life deserves respect. Most importantly, I want to know if Ethan was involved. Even a fierce tiger does not eat its own cubs. Yes, a fierce tiger does not eat its own cubs. I really want to know if my lover has already become so rotten that he personally killed his own child. After that day, I tacitly accepted Tony's approach and often went out with him. People in the circle had long known that Ethan and I were divorcing, but what they didn't expect was that I actually had a new love, and it was my attending doctor. This was no different from openly spitting on Ethan. Unable to endure it any longer, Ethan came to me over the issue of property division. To achieve the best effect, Tony accompanied me to the meeting. This completely broke Ethan down. He raised his hand to hit someone but was stopped by me. Enough. Not enough. Nina, have you long been involved with this man? I wondered why you were so tough about separating from me this time. Turns out you had already found someone else. What right do you have? Nina, have you forgotten the promise between us? The crimson in Ethan's eyes was undeniable. I thought for a moment, then leaned close to his ear and spoke. A few seconds later, the tea on the table was smashed to the floor by Ethan. He looked extremely angry. You're talking nonsense. Don't even think about slandering Chloe. Nina, I'm telling you, this matter of your cheating isn't over between us. You'll never escape my grasp. You are my woman, and in this life, you can only marry me. Don't talk about Chloe harming the child. You couldn't protect the child yourself, you don't deserve to be a mother. I moved slightly, and for the second time, those words left me utterly shattered. Chloe, who had been waiting at the door, rushed in. Her target was Ethan, and the first thing she did upon entering was to shield him. I was furious and rushed forward, grabbing Chloe by the collar. It was you, it must have been you who killed my child. I will find the evidence, I definitely will. I frantically grabbed Chloe by the neck, she blindly screamed desperately, tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't, how could I possibly harm Ethan's child? I consider Ethan the most important person, and his child is also my child. No matter how well she acted, I still saw a fleeting trace of guilt in her eyes. Ethan, who was sitting on the ground, struggled a bit. I knew he was enduring inner torment and staggered as he let go of Chloe. The snow-white neck bore deep marks from the strangling. After gasping in fright, Chloe curled up in Ethan's arms seeking comfort. Ethan, I know I shouldn't have fallen for you, but I can't control my feelings. No matter how Nina hits or scolds me, I deserve it. But I just want to stay by your side, I haven't crossed any boundaries. Please, don't let Nina strangle me to death, I don't want to leave you. Large tears soaked Ethan's collar. This was Chloe's usual trick, and every time, Ethan would stand by her side. This time, the man in front of her still reached out his hand, but just as it was about to touch Chloe's back, he suddenly stopped. Nina. A hand covered my eyes from behind. He was like a guardian, softly comforting me not to be afraid. Fortunately, in those few seconds when I couldn't see, Ethan threw Chloe to the ground and grabbed her jaw. Who told you to say that about Nina? She just lost her child and is emotionally unstable. She was only playing with you, understand? Ethan's tone was full of threat, and this time Chloe truly cried. From her dilated pupils and slightly trembling body, one could see her disbelief and fear. She didn't understand how, in just a few hours, her brother Ethan had changed. I heard you. But adaptability has always been Chloe's motto. The current situation didn't allow her to think, so she could only obediently acknowledge that she understood. I'm sorry, Nina, I spoke carelessly just now. I understand the pain of losing your child, it was my fault. After standing up, Chloe deliberately emphasized the words losing your child to provoke me, and I did not disappoint her expectations, slapping her hard across the face. You are the one who killed my child. I have found the evidence, Chloe. I'm waiting to see your price. I stared into Chloe's eyes, scaring her into forgetting how to react. Tony shielded me and introduced himself. Hello Miss Chloe, I am Nina's former attending doctor and junior schoolmate, and now her boyfriend. Recently, thank you for taking care of my girlfriend at her bedside. I have seen everything and kept it in my heart. Tony's action was to remind Chloe of what she had said in the hospital. Why you, hello. Chloe clearly remembered and stammered a hello in response, quietly objecting. Nina, I've already said, I love brother Ethan. His child is naturally my child. I could never harm my own child. Besides, I was in trouble that day and simply didn't have the means or motive to commit the crime. Brother Ethan can testify to that. She eagerly turned back, waiting for Ethan's reply. But in reality, Ethan was grinding his teeth as he stared at Tony's hand resting on my shoulder. Only when he realized everyone was watching him did he come back to his senses. The matter of the child was indeed not done by Chloe, Nina. I know you're very upset, but everything must be based on evidence. He said he believed it, but his expression was complicated, and even Chloe noticed something different about him. I pressed on, Ethan, since you don't believe the person in front of you is the murderer who killed the child, then we have nothing to discuss. Hand over what belongs to me, and from now on, we'll go our separate ways. I will avenge the child myself. Nina is right. Someone like Ethan really doesn't deserve to be a father. Tony stood behind me at the right moment to back me up, while Chloe suppressed her discomfort and looked at Ethan expectantly. She also hoped Ethan would settle things with me quickly. No matter the reason, once it's settled, I wouldn't have to entangle with Ethan anymore, and she could marry into the Luo family. After all, the Chu family can't hold on much longer now. I disagree. Under the gaze of the three, Ethan frowned and rejected my proposal. Nina, no matter what reason you give, I will not separate from you. I love you. If you want property, I can give you everything, including all of the Luo family assets, but I will not separate from you. The Luo family was exactly what Chloe was scheming for. She never expected that, at this point, Ethan could actually offer all of the Luo family's assets. I even brought the documents. Ethan took out a stack of papers from a nearby briefcase, clearly labeled as share transfer agreements. I listened to Chloe's breathing grow heavier bit by bit and teasingly said, Ethan, I will never forgive you. With a shocked look in Chloe's eyes, I slapped her hard and turned to leave. Before leaving, Tony looked back and passed on a message for me. Revenge is not a matter of if, but when. Miss Chloe, I believe you won't forget the city where your parents traveled. I revealed to Chloe what I knew, then went to the temple to burn incense. It was a famous and highly effective temple locally, requiring a step-by-step climb up the mountain. Tony stayed by my side, and even though I drove him away many times, he still followed me. Helpless, I could only kneel down and kowtow step by step, naturally asking for justice. Ethan also came running. Without a word, he knelt on the ground, begging to reconcile with me. Thus, in front of the Buddhist temple, a strange scene unfolded. I knelt at the very front, kowtowing step by step. Tony followed my movements, shouting for justice. But at the very end, Ethan was crying, begging me to turn back. Nina, I know I was wrong. It's my fault. I lied to you every time. Over the years, chasing fame and fortune made me forget my true self. Nina, please look back at me, okay? We can still have children. Please don't abandon me. Even strangers were moved to tears by him, let alone Chloe who was by his side. She felt embarrassed, followed immediately by fear. Betrayal by a loved one, coupled with the revelation of the truth about the car accident, rather than ending up with nothing, it was better to take a desperate chance. This temple rarely has visitors, and Ethan had already drawn half the attention. Now, as long as he pretends to argue with me, he can quietly push me down the mountain without anyone noticing. Chloe found the key to the matter and ran over to me, urging me repeatedly. Nina, for Ethan's sake, please forgive him, Nina. She kept talking and talking until the towering temple appeared before us. My knees were stained bright red with blood, and Tony wasn't in much better shape. The opportunity was right in front of me. Chloe deliberately pulled me along, her face full of worry. Nina, I know you're upset about losing the baby, but things aren't what you think. I didn't harm your child, and Ethan really does love you. She used some force to pull me outside. My knee was injured, and I had little strength, so I went in the same direction with her momentum. Let go, release me. I struggled angrily. Chloe shouted once, then grabbed my hand and fell backward. At the critical moment, she pulled back hard, trying to use my strength to steady herself before pushing me down, creating the illusion that I fell down the stairs while trying to save her. But I had already seen Tony standing nearby, so I deliberately screamed loudly. Chloe, you actually want to kill me. As I spoke, I tightly grabbed Chloe and fell backward. The result was that Tony caught me, while Chloe rolled all the way down the stairs to the foot of the mountain. When the rescue team found her, all they saw was a pool of blood. She was done for. I took out the camera I had prepared in advance from my body and handed it to the police. This move was my narrow victory. In my original plan, Chloe would make a move against me and then bring trouble upon herself. As long as she panicked, she would definitely find someone to deal with it, and by then, the truth about the car accident would surely be revealed. The unexpected surprise was that she actually wanted me dead. She thought she had the upper hand, and when the positions shifted, she whispered, "So what if I killed your child? You'll soon be down there with him." The camera precisely recorded this statement. Although it couldn't serve as evidence, it could be used to intimidate the family of the driver responsible, who was far away in Jeong City. They were just ordinary people whose child fell seriously ill and urgently needed money for treatment. With the help of a private detective, the whole truth came to light. It wasn't Chloe who hired someone to hit me, but she was aware of it. This was all a scheme devised by Chloe's parents. Over the years, the Chu family has been living off their savings, and everything in the household is on the brink of collapse. Desperate and out of options, Mr. Chu encountered the driver responsible for the accident. He posed as a good Samaritan to support them. Likewise, the driver needed to hit me while drunk driving. They had planned everything carefully and never intended to let the driver live. Chloe was also the key piece because only she could make Ethan believe that it was just an accident and close the case hastily. When I woke up, everything had settled. They thought they had won for sure. By then, Chloe would marry Ethan, preserving the Chu family, and Chloe could marry the one she loved. Ethan was stunned. He never expected the truth to be like this, that he had a hand in causing the child's death. How is that possible? The once arrogant man fell to the ground, looking at me with a pleading gaze. That day, I only asked him to act out a scene with me. The price I paid was small, but it hurt him so much he could barely breathe. Step by step, bow by bow, it was something we did when we were together. Back then, I begged to be with him for a lifetime. Now, I beg to never meet him again. Nina, I know I was wrong. I really didn't know it was like this. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have kept her by my side. He wept bitterly in confession, and Ethan's parents also looked at me with guilt. Chloe's involvement was accepted by everyone, whether they participated or not. The child's death was related to all of them. Ethan, everything about Chloe was with your tacit approval. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't have been so bold. Don't you understand? It's all because of you. The death of my child was because he had an irresponsible, fickle father. If Chloe is the original sin, then Ethan is the greatest accomplice. So I want him to take part in this drama, to trap him in a lifetime of regret. Later, Chloe couldn't be saved, and Chloe's parents were sent to prison. Ethan left all his property to me. I did not refuse, but I rejected Tony's pursuit. My life is the continuation of that little life. My current mission is to see this world again on behalf of my baby.